Hi, and welcome to the 10-Minute Food Truck Training Podcast. My name is Bill Moore. I'm the founder of Food Truck Training Group on Facebook, co-owner with my beautiful wife, Melissa, of our own food truck. It's called Food Truck 101, and I'm the executive director of the National Street Food Vendors Association, which is a nonprofit dedicated to education, advocacy, and uplifting all food vendors. Today, I'm going to be talking about that age-old question in our industry, and that is, how do you figure food costs? And I'm going to give you a couple of different examples and why you need to do it the way I'm going to explain. But before we get into that, I want to remind you guys I'm going to be in Orlando, Florida this year, November 12th and 13th. I'm going to be a part of the Food Truck Owners Expo. I'll be giving two classes. One is on writing a profitable menu, and one is on marketing in the off-season. After I give those classes, I'll be out on the main expo floor. I'll be kicking off the campfire sessions where you guys can sit and listen to me talk about a different subject or ask me some questions. Then after I kick off those campfire sessions, I'm going to be joining our association's booth. Again, that's the National Street Food Vendors Association. And I'll be in that booth where you guys can join me, ask me all kinds of questions. The association is going to be all about how we can help you with your business. Again, that's in Orlando. That's November 12th and 13th. And if you'd like to order tickets, please go to ftoexpo.com. Place that order today. And when you do, put in the code FTTG15 for a 15% discount. I want to thank Table Needs for sponsoring this episode of the 10-Minute Food Truck Training Podcast. Table Needs is a full-service POS system capable of handling your busy food truck, cash, credit card, and reporting needs. Just check out the link in the description for more information about Table Needs. So now let's talk about your profit and loss statement and specifically how to figure out food cost. Now, if you're a member of our Facebook group or you are a member of the association, and certainly if you've been listening to this podcast, you know that I recommend that everyone start around a 25% food cost. The reason being, you need to be that low in food cost just so you stand a chance of making money. Most food truck owners will price to get that 25% food cost, but then never follow up to see if they're actually hitting it or not. In practice, a food truck is going to be between 6 and 8% off or more on their food costs. So they think they're running a 25, but they're really running a 31 to 33% food cost, which becomes a problem because that means you have a whole bunch of waste or a whole bunch of food that's not accounted for, or you have a whole bunch of food that's being given away. That is a challenge every food truck owner has to face. But how do you determine your food cost? You guys know that I recommend that 25% or 4 times cost. So what that means is if you add up all the ingredients and all the paper products used to serve that guest, that particular menu item, you're going to take that grand total, multiply it by 4, and that's going to give you a menu price. Once you have that menu price, then your challenge becomes, can we control the food and not waste a lot of food so I can hit that 25% recipe cost? And if you're able to hit it, then that's awesome. But there are a lot of people out there that will tell you, no, it can be 33%, or no, you don't have to worry about the food cost trying to get everything at 25%. You can run a 40%. And then they'll give an example. They'll say, for example, on a 40% food cost, if you have a $6 item, cost you $6. So all the ingredients, all the food, all the paper cost you $6. You sell it for $15. That's a 40% food cost. That means you have $9 of gross profit, which you think, well, $9 is pretty good. Here's how that works out. Let's just say that that's the only thing on the menu that you sell. That's the only product you carry. So it's going to have a 40% food cost. That means that if you have a $2,000 a month fixed cost, so $2,000 is paying for the rent, it's paying for your salary, it's paying for the commissary, it's paying for whatever loans you've taken out, it's paying for the internet, the insurance, and all of those other expenses that you have as a food truck owner. If that comes to $2,000 and you only sell that one product at a 40% food cost, that means your break-even point is a lowly $3,333. Which means that $15 product, you need to sell 222 of them. Now you're going, why doesn't sound that bad? And you're right, it doesn't sound that bad. A lot of people get hung up on, well, if I buy this case at $40, it should generate $800 worth of sales. Well, that's awesome, but that's not how you figure food costs. That's not how you price a menu. That's just giving you roundabout numbers. What you need are details, because details is what funds your bank account. So let's look at a couple of different scenarios with this 40% food cost. Let's say you got a product that costs $2.50. So if you're going to run that 40% food cost, that's going to give you a $6.25 menu price, meaning that it will take, to hit that $3,300 break-even point, it's going to take you selling 533 of those products. It's much easier to sell that $6 item than it is a $15 item, because every sales level takes you out of somebody's billfold or somebody's purse. Now, our goal as a business owner is to be in the most people's pocketbook that we can be in. But when you sell that $15 item, you've cut off a whole bunch of people that could probably afford that product if it was $10. But of course, the food cost on that's going to be much higher. So where do you balance it? You have to have a sales mixed food cost. So that means you're going to have some items that you sell at 25%, like I recommend. You're going to have some items you're going to have to sell at 35 or even 40% because people just won't pay the price if you are able to charge that 25% food cost. For example, shrimp. You buy a bag of shrimp, it may cost you $15 and you get 3 or 4 portions out of it. So that means each portion of shrimp, before you put it in a box, before you cook it, before you do anything else to it, is costing you, let's say, $5 a portion. By the time you cook it and add your seasonings and all the flavorings you do and give them some sauces, package it up, give them utensils and stuff, you may be up $8, $9, $10 just for a portion of shrimp. Now, when you throw in some other veggies and stuff, now you might be up to $12 or $13 before you ever hand it to the guest. So you might have to sell that for $39 to be able to make money. That's a 33% food cost. And I don't like 33% food cost, but you have to do what you have to do. The problem is at $39, you are now out of the pocketbook of a whole bunch of people. And that's still a 33% food cost. So you don't have to sell as many, thankfully, to reach a sales goal. But the problem becomes, how are there enough people in that area where you're at that can afford a $39 meal from a food truck? So that's why you got to have a balance. You got to have some things that are expensive, some things that are cheap, and then let those two things counterbalance each other. So on that $39 shrimp plate, you got to sell drinks, you got to sell desserts, you got to move that ticket average up by adding on those low food cost items to help balance your overall food cost, which means when you balance it, you will have fewer guests required for you to be able to break even. So I told you guys what a $2.50 product being sold for $6.25, that's a 40% food cost. In order for you to break even, if you have $2,000 worth of fixed costs a month, would require 533 people coming in and buying that $6.25 item. 533 might seem like a huge number, and you might be thinking, well, I do that in a couple days. Either way, you still need that number to be able to break even. But what happens if you take that same $2.50 product and sell it for $10? 25% food cost. The gross profit on that is $7.50. Most likely you've only eliminated a few people that can't afford anything above $6.25. But you're certainly still within the realm of an average price for a product on the typical low-end food truck. So $10 meal. How many people does that take for you to break even? It takes $2,666 to break even if you need $2,000 worth of fixed costs. That's not a whole bunch. That's 266 people spending $10 with you every time they come to buy. That's why a sales mix food cost is important. You can't look at a single product and go, I can make $9 off of that. Good for you. What about the rest of the menu? Can you sell enough of those at that price to be able to hit your break-even point? Your food cost is only one number you need to know. If you don't know what the break-even point is of your business, you will fail. That means you're living on cash flow, crossing your fingers and hoping enough money comes in today to pay the bills that you had due yesterday. And when something interrupts that cash flow, you are in a world of hurt. Real life example, go back to the number of restaurants that closed during COVID. In many states, they were only closed 2 weeks. So they had a 2-week interruption in their cash flow and they closed. How many times have you been working as a food vendor and it's rained both weekends you were going to go out? So now you've lost 2 weeks worth of sales. Were you stressed? Were you worried? Did you close? That's what the interruption of cash flow does to a business. But if you don't understand your numbers, you don't know when that interruption is going to impact you. Is it 1 day you miss? Is it 5 days? Is it 10 days? Can you go a whole month with no sales and still be okay? You've got to understand all your numbers. So food cost is just the beginning. Food cost per item is something you write out and create a menu. And then we talk about what's the sales mix going to be? How many of product A at a 40% food cost are you going to sell? How many of product B at a 20% food cost are you going to sell? And you go all the way down through the menu, all the way down to the drinks, all the way down to the desserts, to the side items. How many of each of these things do you think you're going to sell? And then we look at that and see what kind of food cost that creates for the business. Then we plug that food cost into a break-even analysis where we have every single other expense listed. And everything that's not a hard expense, or we know that I had to pay $1,000 a month in rent at the commissary, that's a hard fixed expense. You know what it's going to be, whether you're open or closed, you got to pay that bill. Then we also got to have those budgeted items. Or are we spending on marketing? That's a percentage relative to our sales. What are we going to set aside for repair and maintenance? Because we know stuff's going to break down and we want to have money set aside in an account somewhere to pay that when it happens. How much of a percentage are we setting aside for those things? And all the other variable expenses. And there's a bunch. So food cost is just the beginning. It's the tip of the iceberg. There's a whole bunch of stuff under the surface of the water that has to be done as far as a business goes. So when I see somebody talking about, $6 is what it costs and we'll sell it for $15 and that's a $9 gross profit on that product, that's what you got to be worried about. No. What you got to be worried about is the entirety of the menu and how it balances from product to product and item to item. Now, yes, you can figure all this out as a brand spanking new business that never sold a French fry. You can figure it out. And then we tweak the numbers as we go and start to get real data. Starting with a guess is better than starting with nothing. And if we guess wrong, we guess wrong. But we learned, and now we know what is going to happen in our area. But you got to start somewhere. The place not to start is looking at, we can make $9, we sell this for $15. That 40% food cost doesn't matter. Oh, it matters. Matters a bunch. Because again, what that 40% food cost forces you in is having a higher break-even point. 25% food cost on $2,000 worth of sales means you need $2,666 a month in sales to break even. 40% food cost, same $2,000 fixed cost means you need to have $3,333. That is almost a $700 a month difference in sales. Now, I don't know about you, but I'd rather go with the lower number. I'd rather get to my break-even point quicker so I don't have to have more hair turned gray and more hair being pulled out because I'm worried about how I'm going to generate sales. Understand all of your costs. If you don't understand your costs, join the Facebook group. We've got a whole bunch of free information there. If you need help, ask. We're there to help. Thank you guys so much for listening to the 10-Minute Food Truck Training Podcast. If you're enjoying what we do, please consider subscribing to the podcast. And if you really like what we do, show us some support. There's links in the description to make that happen. Every little bit does help keep us going. Until next time, you guys have a profitable day.